Welcome to the Other 165. On this show, we want to talk about what to do when life happens, when things knock you down and discourage you throughout your week. Join us as we discuss how to stay encouraged and develop true relationships of love and discipleship. We hope you enjoy this week's episode.
Right. Well, it is finally here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the maiden voyage of the Other 165. If you only knew everything that has been going on in the past couple of weeks, months that has led up to this point, it has been life-changing. It has been
Amen.
awesome. It has been horrible. It has been tear the very small amount of hair left on my head out in frustration at times, but so rewarding and so worth it. We are so excited to be with you today, and we are just believing God that this ministry is going to be excellent. And I am your host, Aaron Kochek. Please say hello to my co-host, Joel Hoffman.
Hello, how you guys doing?
So this first episode is going to be not a ton of content like the rest of the show will be. This is going to be more of an introduction. We're going to share our testimonies, share our hearts with you, kind of give you a little insight into who we are, why we're doing this, what we want to do, what we want this to accomplish. So we're going to just take a few moments today and go through those things with you. And first of all, we're going to start off with the reason for the show. Why are we doing this? What brought us to this point? And it really all started, like 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, something like that. So
I'd say 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, 2 years. It's been, Joel and I worked together, and we've known each other for much longer, but I believe our shifts started to line up a couple years back, and we actually started to be able to talk and connect with each other a little more than we had before, above, general pleasantries. And we started to really connect when we started to talk about our faith. We realized that we had a lot of similar upbringing. We have a lot of similar goals. We really love our wives.
That's true.
That was something we started talking about too. But what would you say would be the main topic that really brought us together?
We both wanted more.
Yes.
We wanted more of Christ, and you could say in the church, we saw so much more that us being believers that we could do more. And I think like working together, it was like you could say it was crazy how God brought us together because we're opposites, but at the same time with the same mission and love for God. Because like how you were saying, and I think like as we sat down and we started digging into the Bible, looking into different ministers that you would even share with me that would help us or something like that, we started realizing that there's more that we can do in order to not just help each other, but to help others outside.
Yeah, he is not lying when he says that. Like, as much as we've connected and we have a lot of similarities about us, our personalities are the exact opposite. And honestly, from the show, and maybe if you've been following our social media, some of the videos I've been doing, you may think that I am the outgoing, boisterous personality and Joel's kind of the quiet, reserved one. Switch those, because that is the opposite. I am very much the quieter one, and Joel is the, it sounds mean when I say loud, but you are loud, dude.
Yeah, I don't shut up sometimes.
But he'll walk into a room and he wants to meet everybody, he wants to talk to everybody, he wants to love everybody. I struggle with that. But, by the grace of God, we're going to see how this works.
Oh man. And it was fun, you could say, like thinking about like what brought us together. I remember I was just praying and thinking, you could say, as we went through this first episode, and I was like, what verse basically tied in? And I remember it was First First Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, where it was like, so encourage each other and build each other up just as you already are doing. And our whole goal out of most of this whole situation is we were encouraging each other to love other people, to love each other, to love God more. And then we started realizing, like, man, we can encourage others to do more and love each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think this year, the beginning of this year, is when we really started talking about, like, we felt like we were being called to do something. At first, it was not this. We won't get into what the other things were that we were thinking about. We were just kind of throwing ideas out, like, oh, we could do this, we could do that, it'll be awesome. And then I want to say it may have had even something to do with like the COVID thing, to where my sisters actually started a podcast,
Yeah.
and just one more cookie. Check it out; it's good.
Mm.
But we kept having these talks at work. Just we have to do something. Like, what can we do? What can we do? And then this idea of a podcast came up, and then along with that, Joel came up with the 31 days of inspiration that we've been doing on our Instagram and our YouTube channel. And it clicked, like, with everything going on with, social distancing and not being able to go gather with people and love each other like we were once able to. Things are starting to change. So now, how do we do what we want to do, which is encourage people, reach out to people, minister to people, when we can't do that? But thanks to technology, even though it fights us every step of the way, we are able to do that now. And the whole thing just started falling into place, and it was so exciting. But obviously, we know the struggles that have been as well. But again,
But I
totally
mean,
worth it.
no, and that's the beauty in it. I think that um, most people, you could say, like, they'll see us and they see the happiness, but there are a lot of struggles in the sense of us having to be on our knees, us having to praying, you know what I'm saying, having some praying wives that basically supported the ministry. And to support the ministry meant that they had to sacrifice time with us in order for us to give more to this world, just like how Christ did for this world. And I think, like, us sacrificing, it was a sacrifice we're willing to make because we saw that we grew as in our relationship, in the sense of sometimes having to be honest with each other when we knew for a fact that we just needed to hear the truth on views that we were looking at, which is what basically has brought me to be close to Aaron, is because he'll just tell me down the truth, which that's what the relationship we want. But our goal in encouraging you is, the truth is, there's more that we can do. There's more than you can do in your church, in your community, in your families, that, what I'm saying, can bring forth the happiness that you've been searching for.
Right. Yeah. I actually, this past weekend, I was at an open house, and I was talking to it's my cousin's husband, and we were talking about ministry. And I feel like one of the biggest misconceptions is, like he said, he would go to a church what am I thinking of? Church service. So he would go to church services at, like, the camp meetings and stuff like that. And he said he would get really upset when the preacher would get up there and say, some of you have a calling on your life. Well, all of us have a calling on our life to minister.
That is very true.
And just because you are not up in a pulpit doesn't mean you are not a minister. You
Amen.
can minister to anyone just by simply giving your story. Your testimony is a way to minister to someone who has been specifically designed to be placed in your life, that can actually learn from all the things that you have been through. You are specifically equipped to help specific people.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. I
So
like
anyway,
that.
we're now going to share our testimonies. And it'll give you kind of an insight into who we are and kind of the road that led up to this ministry that we're doing right now. And I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. And so I grew up in a household that was very much, it was a loving household. We were close, but also we yelled a lot. You know, that's how we um, emoted. That's any kind of conflict resolution wasn't, hey, let's sit here and talk about it. Like, well, no, let's scream. Like, if you're going to yell at me, I'm going to yell louder, and then you're going to yell louder, and then that's just how it goes until there's a shouting match and we run out of breath. So that was growing up the way that I started to learn how to deal with conflict is to yell, to be angry. And anger started to become a part of me. And I grew up also very close with my dad. And I've always been close with my mom. I still am. I am a huge mama's boy, not ashamed to admit it. But I had a very up and down roller coaster relationship with my dad. And it is a defining part of my life is my relationship with my dad. It defines a lot of who I am now, and it defines a lot of who I was growing up. And it also kind of ties in to my view of church and the way that I dealt with things. And when I was in my mid-teens, I started to not have the greatest relationship with my dad. He worked a lot, and I think we all kind of resented him for that. And it just created a lot of rockiness. And again, instead of having talks like, hey man, could you make a little more of an effort to like spend time with me? If we had some sort of disagreement, it just turned into yelling, fight, shouting match. And so that just kind of continued to separate our relationship. And my dad was very much involved in the church in that like he drove a taxi. And I used to, when I was a kid, I used to ride around with him. He would take me with just as something to do. Like I would hang out with him, we would listen to music, and he would take his cab fares places. And this guy would tell anyone about his faith, and um, just unashamed. And he would be the guy in church that everyone kind of look at like, oh, that dude is getting it. He was the loudest one to scream and shout, and he would dance around and get after it. And he, on the outside, was very much a devout Christian. But so when I was in my early 20s, I found out that my parents were separating. And it was because my dad was unfaithful to my mom. And again, not having the emotional maturity to deal with those things in a healthy way, it was immediate hatred. This dude is dead to me. I refused to even say his name. When someone would talk about him, it was kind of a joke for a while, but I kind of feel bad about it now. But um, when someone would be like, "Oh, your dad's coming by later," I'd say, "Who?" And I just refused to even like acknowledge his existence. And like now, looking back, it seems a little silly, but I was just so dinged up about that I felt betrayed by him. I felt the betrayal towards my mother, who I would move heaven and earth for. like he hurt her, so now, you know, all of that. And it was really bad for a while. And then my parents actually started to reconcile, and I still didn't want to have anything to do with him. And I told my mom that I didn't think she should have anything to do with him. But she said, they've been married for over 30 years. She she was going to forgive him because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to forgive. I'll never forget it. I was sitting at lunch. It was just me and my mom at Longhorn Steakhouse in Maryville, and we were eating, and she looked at me and she said, "I don't want you to be mad. I want you to stay calm, but I'm filing divorce papers." And I was like, "What? I thought you guys were like..." No, he had still been unfaithful the entire time, including when she was starting to reconcile with him. So then it's just like, okay, goodbye. So I had just deep anger, bitterness, hatred for this man. How dare you? And I then, which is even worse, started to aim my anger and bitterness at the church on top of it, because it was so oftentimes we blame the failures of fallible humans on the
Yep.
church. Well, you're a church person. You're supposed to be better than that. Yeah, you are supposed to be better than that, but it doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So, but still, I said, I'm not going to be involved with a church that allows, well, not allows, but like basically I was using my dad as the example. Like, you're going to put on this nice fancy show when you're in the building of the church, but the rest of the week you're doing what? So it just really soured me to anything church related. And fast forward about 5, 6 years, um, I finally decided, through the help of my mom and my sisters, who just kept trying to convince me that I needed to deal with my anger and my bitterness. Like, they would say, you don't have to be his friend. You don't have to hang out with him all the time, but you have to forgive him for you, because this anger and bitterness was poison inside of my veins, and it was affecting my relationships. It was affecting my marriage. It was affecting my relationship with my mom and my sisters. It was affecting me at work. So I finally decided that I was going to at least forgive him enough to where I didn't hate his guts. So I started talking to him a little bit off and on, and I started to get a little better. And eventually, I got to the point where I could actually sit down and have a meal with him. And I think what really kind of tipped the scale for the good is when I started to play hockey at one of the places down the road here, and he would come and he would watch my games. And I mean, it sounds so silly, like I'm a little kid. Like, my dad showed up to my little league game. I'm 30 years old, granted, when I'm doing this, and it just felt nice that the guy who for so long was not around took time out of his day to say, like, I actually heard him one time on the phone with a customer, like, I can't get you until 9 o'clock because I have to go watch my son play hockey.
That's
My
pretty
30-year-old son. But that actually meant a lot to me. So I started to let him in some more, and we he was more of a friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't dad anymore. He was Bob. He was the guy that every once in a while we'd grab lunch, he'd come see me play hockey, maybe we'd go see a movie together, whatever. And and I was okay with that, like that was fine. I didn't need him to be my dad anymore. I'm in my 30s. I didn't need him to be my dad, but I needed not to hate him. And
Yeah.
then he got into his accident 2 years ago, and I got a phone call, and my sister said that he had been in an accident, and they didn't have much news about it, but it wasn't good. And I was like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, I am when I'm telling this story, he doesn't know how ashamed I am of my behavior right now. And she was like, they're airlifting him to Chicago, and we're gonna go see him. Do you want to come with? And I'm sitting on the couch comfy, like, I mean, can I go tomorrow? Like, and she was like, I guess. And I still to this day can't believe that I was so selfish at the time. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So she hangs up, and then my mom calls me about half hour, 45 minutes later. She's like, yo, it's serious. I'm not saying you have to go, but you should go. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So we drove out there, and it was way worse than they were leading on. He was in a coma. His leg was so badly broken that they're going to have to probably amputate it. He was going to be in a coma for medically induced until they could figure something out. So it became apparent in the next couple of days that we were going to have to let him go. And I'm sitting at his bedside, and I'm holding his hand, and all of what I just told you is just washing over me, and how stupid I was to, yes, he did something wrong, and it shouldn't have gone down like that, but to hold on to something for so long, and I'm just sitting there talking to him, telling him that I forgive him, I hope he forgives me, and I have to just sit there and think to myself and tell him, are you going to die without me being able to tell this to your face? And he did. He ended up passing away without me ever being able to be man enough to just let go of the past and say, I know you messed up. I know you were a human, but you're my dad and I love you. I never said that to him. And that was honestly one of the most pivotal moments in my life, because since then has been nothing but thoughts and actions of that will never, ever happen again. I will never, ever allow something like anger or bitterness or stubbornness get in the way of healing a relationship, healing my heart, healing someone else's heart or relationship, because it's not worth it. Because when it comes to an end, you start to really realize what's really important. And of the 33 years that we had together, I'm sitting next to his bedside, and I'm not thinking of all of the bad things. All I'm thinking is, I just wish we could go back and ride around in the cab and listen to music and make jokes. And, you start to really realize that all of this stuff that you're holding on to is not important, and it's poison, and you just need to let it go. And I say all that to say, this again was the pivotal moment where I not only wanted myself to heal, but I wanted to help others who maybe don't know how to heal. And with this podcast, I really want to help each other and anyone who ever listens to this to know that, like, we are trying to help you. We want to be here for you. We will pray for you because life is hard enough without holding on to all this extra baggage. You know what I mean?
Amen. That's so true. I think it's so true out of this situation, man. And I mean, tying into my testimony, I think to give you a little bit of quick background, born in 1986 in the country of South Africa. My father in 1988 decided to come to the United States. I was just about to turn 3 years old. And he came here to study at a school called Moody Bible Institute. And we lived in Chicago and then moved to Gary, Indiana, and lived in Gary for a while. Now, with my father being a missionary and for my family all living in South Africa, it made it to where sometimes I felt alone, because you could say, like, I had to learn at a young age to really trust people around me, because you could say technically, usually young people, they have their family around them. I have one brother, Roscoe, and then I have a mother, Lorraine. And then, so we as a family, we were very tight, but in ministry, my father was very, very involved in the church, which we were also. So my father would do the church and would work full time at the same time. So we didn't really see him as much. So his first church plant in Living Waters was by far the start of my relationship with God. I remember I went through youth pastor Phil Howard. He was the first one to sort of like introduce me to water baptism, where I was baptized at Defenders of the Faith. And I'll never forget, then I went from another youth pastor of Loopy and Freddie. Then it was Pastor Ryan. And like, it was cool to see at a young age, like my relationship of trusting and learning to love people in my teens was being challenged in the youth ministry. And my family, you know, we spent as much time as we could, but my father was very, very involved in ministry, because like, especially in the city of Gary, he was when he left South Africa, before he became a Christian, he was an alcoholic. So his passion was to reach the lost, in the sense of those that were struggling with addictions in drugs and alcohol. And we were very much involved in that. And in my teenage, I started getting a great relationship with Christ. And I had great friends from Billy and David Watson, Tim Smith, the Dennis boys, Terrence and Williams. And then we were a good family that we would go to youth ministries and start growing. And then before you know it, we moved to Michigan City. And now, you know, I start meeting different people from the Hoskins and the Harveys. And I'm starting to see my relationship with Christ not be as strong as it was in my early teens, because I was very involved in the church. Now I'm getting older. And I started seeing myself in a sense of not being able to do as much in the sense of sports, with school, not having that involvement with my dad, because he was so involved in the church and changing people's lives, that I started just basically just struggling with our relationship together. And I'll never forget, you could say, as time went on and things would change, I started seeing if I could find love in different ways. So, you know, you start dabbing into the world. I never messed with alcohol, I never messed with drugs, but then I started, you know what I'm saying, just girl after girl, engaging in relationship to find what I thought was happiness, but it was never happiness. And my father would always sit there, and he was very honest and blunt, would always tell me, you have to get right with Christ. You know, and it was one of those to where he would never, my father always loved me. But the thing is, as a young person, my brother Aaron said something yesterday, which was so powerful. is we put check boxes. And when people don't fill them boxes, we feel they don't love us. But I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about all these things that I was like, oh, well, my dad doesn't do this. He doesn't come to my sports, or he doesn't do this, and da da da. I started looking at, and I thought I wasn't being loved. So I started just like wanting to run away from the church, and I would go to church, but I wasn't involved in the church, if it makes sense. And my relationship was very, very, very hurt in that situation because of I played church. So when I got older, I started seeing that things were not as real and as authentic. And I had a praying mother that would always approach me and talk to me. And it just never, ever grabbed at me because I was always trying to find love in different ways. And I remember being involved in some of my friends, seeing their divorce and seeing the pain they were in. And I was like, God, I said, what can we do more? And but my relationship with Christ, I'm talking to God, but my relationship with him was very limited. I only contacted him when I wanted something. It wasn't in a sense of getting to know him. So I'm saying that people didn't love me and I was looking for love. But the thing is, the man who created love was trying to love me more. And I didn't even want to give him a chance to get to know him more so I could understand what true love was. And it took, I'll never forget, before starting to work at job I'm at, First Lady Tidwell, I remember just going to that church and just looking at my dad, and I just was like, gave him that look like, I'm tired of living my life as honestly, a fake Christian. I wasn't living my life 100% right. There were days I would get on fire for God. I would believe the sermon. I'd want to change. And then I would stop with my relationship with Christ. So then I would fall back into the world. And because I wasn't using my other 165 the right way. And so when I gave the world my 165 rather than giving more to Christ, then it just basically the world took over my heart. I went to that church at Gary with Bishop Tidwell, and I'll never forget when they just talked to me and they just told me, Joel, and they called me out and they said, Joel, you got to come back to this altar and give your life, give it all. Don't just come up here and go through the motions, because everything I was doing in the church was just going through the motions. I was doing everything that I needed everybody to see that, oh, Joel's fine. The smile's on his face. He'll say the right words. I was the best salesman in the world and I had nothing to sell. So it was a joke is what I was living. Well, then that day I made that commitment. I made that commitment and I was like, God, I said, I need this. I need you. I'm going to trust you. And I'll never forget, I sit there and I gave my all, and I sat there with Bishop Tidwell, Nehemiah. It was one of his sisters and his brother. And we were just having lunch, and I just felt like this peace. And the powerful thing out of this situation is my father was always my pastor, and he allowed another person to minister to me because he trusted God throughout that process. Because he knew for a fact that my praying mother was praying. He knew that he was praying. He knew members were praying for me, that even though everybody else saw that I was okay, he knew that I needed to have a relationship with Christ, because he also lived a life to where he was fake in the past, which dabbed him into alcohol. And then he said when he gave up the alcohol and really walked with Christ, he didn't want to see people live that life. And if it wasn't for that day, I'll never forget. After that, it was like God restored everything in my life, because 6 months later, I met my wife. And then a year after that, I wed her. And then a year after that, my father goes on to be with the Lord. And it was one of those toughest things, because I knew for a fact in my heart that I played with God so much that my dad had so much love for me, and there was so much more that he wanted to give to me. But I was so, in the words of Aaron, stubborn, and had so much hatred because of these stupid boxes I created of what I thought that he needed to do to be that father that I expected him to be, when he was just being a father to many and was there for me at any time I needed. And it took, honestly, it took for him to die for me to realize that he was there for me more than what I thought he was. That for him to go, it basically showed me that he was always there, but I didn't allow him in. And I say that to you. How many times has Christ been there? And we just don't allow him in. And we say he's never been there. And it's just a beautiful thing to know that I was blessed enough, and I'm still blessed enough to know that I have a Father in heaven that loves me, and I had a Father on this earth that was here for me to introduce me to him. My fault.
Amen. That was powerful, man. Well done.
My fault. That stupid mosquito.
Very, very powerful stuff there, Joel. So,
no, thank the Lord.
And what we want to do is also, what we want to do now is go into a little bit of our vision for this show. What we would like it to look like down the road, what we feel God has called this ministry to become. And the first thing we want to start off with is talking about the name, the Other 165, and what it means, and what it means to you. So the original idea came from the fact that there is 168 hours in a week, and your typical churchgoer goes hour and a half on Sunday, hour and a half midweek, whatever. And so that's 3 hours. What are you doing with your other 165 hours? And ever since we came up with this name, that was actually the hardest thing for us, right? Was thinking of the name. Like we kept telling each other, like, what about this? And waiting for that look to just like pop, like that's the one. And it just kept not coming until we thought of the Other 165, and we're like, yes, that's it. So
you got to give yourself credit, because like God gave you
I don't want to get
that, and I'll never forget. No, but I mean, honestly, it was beautiful, because like Aaron came up to me. I don't ever forget. I was at work and he said it, and I was like, in my head, I was like, yeah, okay, because it just didn't pop. And I remember he was sitting in his chair and he was like, what do you think? And I was like, well, if it sticks, we'll know. And then I went home, and I think it was that weekend. The more I started like thinking about it, it just like kept sticking more and more. And then by the time we got back to work, I was like in my head, I was like, that's it. And it wasn't because it stuck to me. It was one of those weird things where it didn't pop at first, but then when he explained it, it made more sense of basically it hit the vision 100%.
Yeah. And, this goes back to the point I was making earlier on, where you can kind of start to blame the church for the mistakes of humans. You know what I'm saying? And you can start to think that I'm not getting anything out of church. Church is full of just as many sinners as the world is. And, church can get a bad rap because because I wasn't asking myself, what am I putting in to church, first of all, you sit back and just expect it, like, okay, I woke up early and I showed up here on a Sunday morning, so I've done what I'm supposed to do now. Feed me,
And honestly, it's perfect, because like you said, I think a lot of it is in a sense to where we go to church and the pastors sometimes will say there's more we can do. And we're expecting the pastor to physically be at each thing, when he's trusting that if we hear his word, that there's more that we can do in our own neighborhood, with our family, you know what I'm saying, with our friends, at our workplace. And we're the ones that waste the time. And then we come to church and we expect him to change everything within them 3 hours.
Right. And I remember, like the name kind of just came, but once I started thinking about its implications to me in my life, is, I mean, I've been guilty of this my entire life. You know, I was raised in church, and I did very little to, I was very much a consumer. You know, I'm that guy who shows up and thinks, because I'm here, that's enough. So everyone else, make sure you give me a great religious experience. You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
No, it's true.
I put very little effort into it, and I put zero effort into it outside of those church walls. And then now I understand how silly that is, to think that I was going to grow spiritually if I put zero time and effort. It's just like anything else. Like say working out. You know what I'm saying? Like, all right, I'm gonna do 25 push-ups today because Joel's obsessed with push-ups, and then I'm gonna do nothing for the rest of the week. And then, you know what I'm saying? Like, why aren't I getting huge muscles right now? Why aren't I losing weight or anything? It's like, well, you have to put consistent time and consistent effort into it
Go ahead,
to
brother.
grow.
Yep.
You and your push-ups.
No, but I think it's beautiful out of it. Like, sometimes using analogies like that, it just basically gives certain people that wonder why their relationship, their marriage, um, their personal relationship is struggling, but it's due to the fact that we waste so much time and we give into the world or selfishness rather than allowing God just to minister. And how hard is it, in a sense of baby stepping certain things? Like, it may be like, okay, I'm just going to give, and I mean, not just only, I'm going to give God an hour extra a week. And giving that hour is more than what you gave last week. I guarantee you, in that hour, you'll start seeing different changes because, like you said, in an exercise, if you went from 25 push-ups for one day and you were like, well, I'm going to do 25 push-ups for 3 days, you'll see a change occur in your body, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
push-ups are great.
And I mean, it's kind of the same thing with say reading the Bible. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just a couple of days ago finished up Revelation. So I I started in Genesis, read all the way to Revelation, but that doesn't mean like, okay, I'm done. I'm a scholar now. Like, no, I'm going to go back I'm going to start in the New Testament again. So I'm starting in Matthew again. I'm going to read the New Testament again. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to go to the Old Testament, because the beautiful thing about reading the Bible is every time you read it, it speaks in a different way. And it's not because the words are changing, it's because I am changing. Every time that I read it again, I have changed and I see it in a different way, and he speaks to me in a different way. So the more that I read it, the more that I open myself up to hearing his word, it's infinite possibilities of what can be spoken into your life. And to say, well, you know, God doesn't speak to me. Well, once I started reading his word over and over again and allowing myself to say, I'm open to hearing what you're saying, the more I read, the more I hear.
Amen. And I think that's where it's so beautiful with the vision. It ties into encouraging others, sharpening others, bringing forth others, which in the show you'll see as we get more episodes in, we'll introduce certain guests that may have helped us, that may have brought different change, or we feel that, because we're gonna find people that we may not we won't be able to say everything that, you know what I'm saying, from a topic that can be said, that somebody else, like a pastor or anybody that's influenced us in our life, that can be a guest, you're going to see us bring people that have that quality relationship that have helped sharpen us, or that we know can help sharpen you, in a sense of being in the vision of giving you more.
Yes.
Oh, your face. Your face.
Yeah,
But I mean,
these yeah, we have a lot of ideas for the different guests that we want to use, and we're real excited about that. And it's going to help drive home a lot of the different topics that we want to cover, and some topics will probably come as we go. We have quite a few right now, but it's an ever changing tapestry, because we've already the only two episodes we had locked in were this introductory episode and episode 2. The rest of the episodes have changed just kind of as we have felt, and we want to get into a lot of different things. Like the second episode is going to be about God's love. We're going to be talking about discipleship. We're going to be talking about surrender, and we want to talk about things that people don't really like talking about sometimes, like addictions and forgiveness. Oof. So
that F word.
there's going to be, we would really like to cover a lot of different things, and we just feel like there's going to be some really great guests that are going to come on and just really help us pick up where, because I mean, we don't know everything. We're still on this journey too. You know what I mean? So we'll take all the help we can get. And the other thing, we wanted to encourage you to kind of participate as well. We have, our Instagram, we have our YouTube channel. We also have an email address, and it is theother165hours@gmail.com. So if you have questions, you have comments, you have just something that you would like to share, but you're not really comfortable with the whole putting it out on social media thing, just send it right to our email. That'll be fine. Because really, the objective of this show is we want to challenge ourselves to just really dig in and dive deeper into this belief system that we have of Christianity and our relationship with God, and really just strengthen it and use it to encourage each other. So we want to have eventually an open forum, basically. Like, we want to be yes, we're talking on this podcast, but we're also going to have a bunch of social media stuff that we want you to be able to participate in. Like, we don't want to be in this by ourselves, just talking at you. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is something that we want to share with you, but we also encourage any sort of participation that you want to give.
No. And it's going to be very encouraging to hear certain things that you guys are going to bring to us. And honestly, if something did touch you, feel free to share it, and share that testimony in a sense of how it could have, how it helped you, if it was an episode, or if there's certain topics that we have talked about. Feel free to, elaborate on certain things on there, and we'll be more than happy to comment or anything.
Yeah, we want to do this together, and we want to strengthen our relationship with God, strengthen our relationship with each other, and we can't do it alone. So we just want this ministry to be a gathering force to just really gather together and help each other, encourage each other, inspire each other, and together we're going to make it happen. So
Amen.
We really thank you for hopping on with us. It was fun. And Joel, thanks for being here as always.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Things can be fun. We look forward to dabbing into more.
Absolutely. All right. And once again, we thank you for joining us. We love you. We're praying for you. Be blessed. Be safe. Have a good one.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And we hope you continue to join us on our mission to not only live for God for 3 hours a week at church, but also for our other 165.